Hey y'all, I'm the Midwest Hack, and I mentioned in the intro video about this and all the problems it has that the wiring was a complete disaster. It did not take long to prove me right. Just finished fixing the PTO, went to move it back out of the way to clean up the floor, and it died, and now it won't even crank. But that's not the subject of this video. In this video, we're starting the head gasket. The head gasket kit showed up today, and we're gonna get started on it. Nine 16th wrench, get the valve cover off. Only one of those plug wires fit on there snug. Need to look at replacing all those. Looks like I found my exhaust leak, at least part of it. Guess we'll find out if that still works. Somebody has thoroughly mangled this nut. I think it's supposed to be 7/16, so I don't have any expectation that this is going to turn it. Oh, it did. That is not a very good fit. That's been mangled too, whatever it is. Getting the studs out of the manifold doesn't seem to be working too well, and I'm not thrilled about taking the pulley off that pump. So we'll try moving the line. Power steering fluid looks a little milkier than I would like to see. I think that's going to be another project here soon. Oh, I forgot the governor linkage. I can get to the linkage on the back of the carburetor, but this looks like it might be easier up here. Okay, let's try this again. Oh boy. Oh, that's enough of that. I'm not going to keep messing around with a gauge that doesn't work anyway. Ooh. I decided I'm just going to go ahead and pull the distributor cap completely. Just get it out of the way. Now the oil lines. I'm going to pull this completely off so I don't damage it. Get the battery cable out of the way. And yes, that's all that was holding that on there. Two of these are heavier duty and a real tight fit on those studs. The other two are light duty and have deformed. I'm thinking those have been replaced by somebody. Get this oil line pulled off now. See if the rocker shaft will just lift off now. These all in order. All right, break loose the rest of the head bolts. think that air cleaner is going to come off, so I got better room to work. All right, let's see if this will pop loose. Get that out of the way. All right, y'all, here's the old gasket. I cleaned it up a little bit to see what I could find. Thought we'd maybe talk this through a little bit and see if we can get an idea what might be going on. All of these holes with no copper around them are your head bolt holes. These 4 with copper around them, those are coolant passages, and these are coolant passages. Coolant gets to these, but there's no mating hole in the block. There's just a hole in the head, so coolant just kind of sits there. It can't go anywhere, but it's touching these 2 as well. These copper rings here are where your push rods go through, so that's going to have access to oil. That's going to be your oil drain back holes. So far, what I see for damage on this, the copper right here is peeled back, but that would have given me oil problems, not coolant problems. There's also a big dark area between number 2 and 3 that looks to me like it was probably a combustion leak between those 2 holes. Now the coolant leak in this, as far as I was noticing, looked like it could have been coming all the way along this edge. It looked like it was probably the worst back here. You could kind of, when the tractor was running, you could see a little bit of almost bubbling back at this corner, but this whole edge was wet. Now since this is a multi-layer gasket, I'm wondering if somehow the coolant in one of these passages was getting between the layers of the gasket and pushing out. It just was easiest to get out that edge. I mean, it seems like it would probably be one of these holes since it was at this edge, but in looking all these copper pieces over, I can't see any defects in them. So I'm still not sure how the coolant was passing through. Another thing I noticed is back where I thought it was the worst, the gasket is kind of flared out, almost separated a little bit. And I don't know if that was from coolant passing out or passing out through it, or if there's something else going on there. Notice there's no coating at all on this steel. This new gasket I thought was multi-layer steel, but when I inspect it closer, it's a fiber gasket. I did a quick check of liner standout in this, well, on all 4 holes, but in this area, especially on this hole, on number 2, the liner is barely standing proud of the block, so I don't know if that's what's caused this or not. Our razor blade does still catch it, but not by much. I'm going to take a look at the spec on that and measure it up. At this point, I'm still deciding what I'm going to do. If I'm going to just put the new gasket in and see what happens, it's not that much work to get back to it, or if I want to go a different route. All right, let's grab a wire wheel. Let's try the nut on those. That's not too bad. They can be threaded on by hand now. I spent a little time looking through the manual. I checked on the liner standout, and anywhere between 0 and 3 thou is just fine. This is the lowest spot I could find right here. This is just a razor blade gasket scraper, and it does catch. So it is definitely more than 0. So a liner standout appears to be just fine. I've checked basically all the way around all 4 holes. So I'm good with that. While I was looking into that, the manual also said if you have head gasket leaks, to install the bolts and bottom them out and measure the height from the deck to the head. That'll basically tell you if the bolt holes are tapped deep enough. So I've cleaned up these 3. I'm gonna get these set in place and get the others cleaned up. All right, the bolts are cleaned up and finger tight in the block. I'll get a couple of them measured here. I'll measure most of them off camera, but we'll do a couple on camera. These long ones should measure 3.8125 or less. And that one is 3.0610 roughly. 3.661, 3.630 roughly. Check a couple of the short ones. These should be 3.25 or less. And that is 2.989, 2.990, 2.970. Maybe we'll just fly through the rest of them here quick. Since none of them are very close to the limit, 3.680, 3.590, 3.720. Ooh, better double check that one. We'll come back to that one. And we'll do a rough measurement on this one. 3.746. That is almost 3.9. So this one is too tall. I'm wondering if it's bound up a little bit. We'll check that. I thought I'd cleaned out all the bolt holes, but this one did still have crap in the bottom of it. So I cleaned that out, threaded it back in by hand, and 3.706. So well within spec now. So at this point, I still don't have a smoking gun as to what caused that gasket to fail. My best guess is that whoever installed it didn't put sealant on it. Alice does call for sealant on those head gaskets. So I think I've decided I'm just going to put it back together. I think I mentioned it before. It's not that big a deal to pull this back down. We'll put it together and find out if a new gasket fixes it. I'm going to go ahead and get the gasket dropped in place. This one is marked for up, otherwise the smallest hole for coolant goes towards the front. Alice says to use sealant on both sides of the gasket. However, this is a composite gasket and the manufacturer says not to use any sealant. We'll get the head cleaned up and get it on next. All right, we'll drop the bolts in. And we'll make sure we can get all these to start. I got the adapter for the coolant gauge sender and the thermostat housing cleaned up. I started checking the gasket fit to these, and the gasket fits this adapter just fine. When you put that gasket on the thermostat housing, It's just barely covering that port. I was not very impressed with that. So using that housing as a template, I just cut my own gasket. We're gonna go ahead that way. Let's get those put on. The surface of the head isn't in too bad a shape. There's a little bit of pitting, but the surface of this is in pretty rough shape. So I'm gonna help these paper gaskets out with the little aviation forma gasket. All right, we'll start tightening these down. First pass, I'm just going to do 30 foot-pounds just to get everything seated. All right, I ran out of memory somewhere through that last sequence. So far these have been torqued to 30 and then 50. I'm going up to 70 now. Now when I'm using the crow's foot on these, I've got the crow's foot set at 90 degrees to the torque wrench so that the distance from where the bolt head is to the end of the torque wrench is the same as what it would be if I was directly over it. However, I'm getting pretty worried about this crow's foot holding on to these heads. So far, so good. Final torque on these small ones is 70 to 75. I'm set at 75. They've already been torqued to 70, so they shouldn't get a lot of movement here. A little more than I expected. Okay, those three should be done. I've done several steps on these last time around. I'm going to call that good. We'll get the rocker shaft put back on this, do a heat cycle on it, then pull the rocker shaft back off. We'll check the torque one more time and get this thing put back together. I flipped you guys over to the other side so I could have room to put the push rods back in. Being careful to make sure I get them back where they belong. Set the rocker shaft in. All right, I didn't clean that to a high shine or anything, but I got the garbage out of it. If you remember from when I took this apart, this is where I found a mixture of heavy duty and light duty washers. And the light duty ones were deformed. They were not holding up, so I grabbed a couple washers out of my bin that are kind of between the two, but these are grade 8 washers. I think they'll probably hold up okay. All right, these are getting torqued to 30 foot-pounds. All right, I flipped you back around again. We're going to get this oil tube in place. This old valve cover gasket was in decent shape. So I'm going to, for the initial run-in, I'm going to just reuse this one. And then after I do final torque on the head bolts, I'll put the new one on, rather than taking the chance of the new one sticking and tearing apart. The head gasket kit didn't come with replacements for these little packings for these nuts. So I'm going to put the old ones back on for now and get some new ones ordered. Torque on these is only 10 to 15 foot-pounds. I'm just going to snug them up a little bit for right now for this initial warm-up cycle. Get the oil lines put back in place here. Get the second oil line on. Get the distributor cap back on. I think we're ready to move back over to the other side. Set the air cleaner back in place. The gauge sender back in to plug the hole. I cleaned up the manifold a bit, and I think it'll seal to the soft side of the seals, but I'm going to put a smear of ultra copper on the head, since there's some pitting here, and I'm not convinced that the stainless side of the seal, or the metal side of the seal, will seal to this real well. Grab the seals. All right, the seals are all in place. Let's see if I can get it to slide in without losing any of them. I think that'll do it. power steering line's hooked back up before I get debris in there. Get the choke hooked back up. Fuel line. That's the nut that's extremely mangled. Now coax it just a little bit tighter. It's already been wrecked, so I guess I don't have to worry about that. There, we'll call that good. Get the fuel turned back on and see if that leaks. So far, so good. Slip the intake tube back in place. Let's see if we can figure out how this hacked up piece of radiator hose goes in here. It was this way. Just set the muffler back on for now. I'm not going to tighten it up. Start filling the coolant back up. A gallon of water. It's not quite full, but it's close enough. All right, I think we have all the tools and parts picked up off the tractor. Let's fire it up, see how it does. All right, I figured out what's going on. We've got another electrical problem. We've got juice to the distributor, juice to the coil when it's in start, but then I'm losing that when I go back to run. I will work on chasing that down and get that fixed. All right, we should be ready to start now. I don't know exactly where the problem was. I just went through the crappy old wiring, checked several connectors, eventually got power back to the coil. Should fire right up now. after a heat cycle last night, I pulled the valve cover and rocker shaft back off. I did run over them all and got movement out of almost all the bolts, some of them as much as probably close to 1/8 of a turn. Let it cool down some more overnight. I'm going to run back over these this morning, and I hope to get no movement out of any of them. Down to 75 foot-pounds for these last 3. Maybe a little bit of movement out of a couple of those, but definitely not like last night. I think we got them tight now. Let's get this thing put back together. While I'm getting this rail cleaned up for the valve cover and valve cover gasket, I guess I should tell you too. I don't know how close you were watching, but I hooked up the spark plug wires wrong. I actually made 2 mistakes there. One, I remembered the firing order wrong. And 2, I thought the distributor spun backwards of what it does. So 3 and 4 I had correct, 1 and 2 I had switched. It didn't run very well that way. It ran, actually seemed to idle okay, but when you put it under load, it was backfiring and spitting and was not happy at all. Just a reminder, don't always trust your memory. Drop the rocker shaft back on. And the baffle. I don't feel like taking the starter off so that I can turn this engine over by hand. What I'm doing is just bumping the starter and watching the valves to see where the engine's at. Right now you can see that this rocker is significantly higher than this one. So cylinder number 3 is on its intake stroke. The cylinder before that's going to be 180 degrees from that, so cylinder number 1. If this one's on its intake stroke, this one's on its exhaust stroke, and you can see that the exhaust valve here is open. It's significantly higher. So that one's on its exhaust. Cylinder number 2 is going to be at the same point cylinder number 3 is. So this one's on its intake stroke. It's partway down the bore. This one is also partway down the bore, but instead of being on its intake stroke, it's on its power stroke. On the power stroke, both valves are closed. So this one right now, we can adjust. Interestingly, there is 0 lash here. So we are going to break them both loose. Maybe. And start by getting at least some lash. There we go. A piece of stuff in that one. All right, I got a 13 thousandths feeler gauge. Spec is 12 to 14. I don't know why they bother to give you a range when you're going to use a feeler gauge of a certain size anyway. Feels pretty good. I think I moved it a little bit. We'll check it again. And check one more time. Yep, that's pretty good. Now I don't know why these would be tight. Could be that the valves are sinking in the head. I did not take a look at those when I had it out. Could be that the new gasket is thinner than the old and tightened everything up. Like that. Okay, I'm good with that. Number 2 is set. The next cylinder to be on the power stroke is going to be number 1. I'm going to watch cylinder 4 for when that intake valve opens, 'cause that'll indicate it's on the intake stroke. Number 1 will be on the power. There we go. Number 4 is on the intake stroke. Number 1 should be on the power stroke. That one does have just the tiniest amount of play. But again, the intake valve is tight. I'll keep going through that and get these all set. All right, that should be all of them. I'll run back through these now just to make sure I didn't make any mistakes. I cleaned the valve cover rail again. I'm going to paint on some of the aviation forma gasket. I just don't trust cork gaskets to seal very well. So I like to give them all the help I can. Let's get the gasket in place. I cleaned up the valve cover rail and applied some sealant. Well, y'all, that pretty much does it for the head gasket change. And as with every project on an old piece of equipment, every time you do one thing, you find about 3 more things that need to be done. But for now, we're going to take it for a spin, warm it up, make sure there's no problems. And next, I think we'll get started on the changing those front tires out. Hope to catch you on the next one.